In the dark heart of Middle Tennessee, death came calling on April 19th, 2021. The killer waited beside a barn, shotgun cocked and pointed. Jim Grimes moved through the shadows wearing a headlamp just a few feet away, unaware of the threat. His nightly chore, feeding the livestock, was about to cost him his life. When Jim reached down to shut off the water, the gunman stepped forward.
I heard a very loud, it sounded like an explosion. It was very loud. And I had no idea what it was. And so I picked the phone up, I had my phone, I picked my phone up and I called him. My first response or reaction was, what did he get into? What's he done? What's he got into now? And he didn't answer. And so I walked through and I went out where it's enclosed now, was just a deck. And I walked outside to the deck and he had a headlamp that he wore with it was like a flashlight. And I could see that light up on the hill. And I'm still trying to call him and he's not answering. So when I got out there, I yelled for him because I could see his light and I yelled for him in the light. Never moved and he never answered, and I knew that moment something was wrong, but I had no idea what had happened. And so I took off running and got back to the barn, and I got to him and I could see he was bleeding on his chest. But I'm looking, did something fall off the barn? Did something hit the fence and get him? I'm looking, what's happened? And he's looking at me and he's struggling to breathe.
Dawn Grimes speaks from her late husband's study, seated beneath a portrait that still watches over the room like he never left. It is here, surrounded by the reminders of her 63-year-old husband. Dawn Grimes reflects on the man Jim was, the strength he carried, the kindness he gave, and the lasting mark he left on everyone who knew him. The Grimes owned a pair of auto body advantage collision repair shops and a mechanical repair garage. Jim Grimes was a family man who appeared to have no enemies, admired in his community, respected by all, or so it appeared, until the night violence found him. He was ambushed shortly after arriving home from a board meeting of the Well Outreach, a Spring Hill food pantry that serves households in need throughout southern Middle Tennessee.
He was bigger than life. He was just such a loving, joyful, caring man. Loved his family, loved God, loved his community, and did everything he can to make things better every day. Whether it was stopping alongside the road to help somebody that was broken down and needed help, to I was having a bad day, or one of his kids or one of our employees were having a bad day. He just made it a point every day to make sure that he was there for you, and that you knew he cared about you and he was going to support you whatever you needed.
Jim and Dawn Grimes built their home on this 22-acre spread fronting Buford Station Road in Linville, Tennessee. It's located in rural Giles County, about an hour's drive south of Nashville, near the Alabama state line. A banner runs the length of the front fence pledging, "We will never forget, we will never give up." Dawn recently erected a billboard behind it offering a $1 million reward, leading to the arrest and conviction of the killer or killers of her late husband. It's my experience in criminal cases that the perpetrators can't keep a secret. Investigators hope that a $1 million reward will lead to a tip that can solve the murder that took place in that barn of James Grimes. When Lieutenant Shane Hunter, then an investigator with the Giles County Sheriff's Department, rolled up to the scene, one detail stood out immediately. The murder had occurred within clear view from a well-traveled rural road that ran past the Grimes home. So you feel like the perpetrator would have had to have been there before?
I think they had to have at least some knowledge of the property. I spent many nights thereafter, kind of traversing back and through the property, and I got lost several times crossing the property. So I think that the person would have definitely had to have some kind of knowledge of the area. It's not just something you can pull up on Google Maps and get a 3D imaging of and see all the fences or whatnot.
When then Giles County Sheriff Kyle Helton stepped onto the scene, he felt it. That quiet, unshakable intuition seasoned law officers carry. What was it that you had a feeling about?
Well, we had a person laying there that had deceased. Then no weapon, no signs of any weapons nearby, and a gunshot wound.
Sheriff's investigator Luke Tyson, the lead on the case, arrived at the scene to find Grimes' animals were running loose, unsettled, and scattered. It appeared that Jim Grimes had been bending over to shut off a water spigot near the barn when he was ambushed.
They have lots of electric fences, electric wiring that goes around to keep the horses separate and keep them out of different places, and those were all on. They'd shut them off for us to respond, but you could still see every which way they ran.
Is it your sense from the investigation that there was somebody laying in wait, there was somebody gunning for him?
It certainly looked like that. The darkest spot on the property was right on that side of the barn. They had lights on the front. There was a floodlight on the back of the barn that kind of lit up towards the wood line. And quite honestly, the darkest spot was right there where those lights didn't get to join or anything like that. So.
Was his wallet stolen, jewelry, anything?
He still had his when we searched him, he still had his wallet, his phone, and inside the phone case was, I believe, about $50. His phone was still there. He had the SD card that he just changed out from the trail cams that they'd put up to watch wildlife come up. Still had his wedding rings on. Anything he had in his pocket when he went out there was still in his pockets. So it didn't look like it was a robbery gone wrong.
Flanked by Lieutenant Hunter and Investigator Tyson, Dawn Grimes points to the exact spot where her husband was gunned down. Hunter motions toward the front of the property, explaining that the high fence would have made it tough for anyone to slip in unseen.
This side, we have lights now, but at that time, this was the only side of the barn that wasn't illuminated. We had motion lights on the other sides of the barn, but this was not. So it was very dark here.
At time we had been out there in the dark, and you couldn't see 2 feet in front of you. There are down trees, sinkholes. It's wooded and super dark. And they have a bush hog path that goes along the perimeter of the property, and that would have been the easiest and best way to get in and out without being seen.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like somebody would have to know this existed and know how to get through the maze of electric fences and everything else.
Yes.
What do you think?
Definitely somebody that would have studied the property, known where everything was, and also a general idea of their schedules.
Any sense of, from the evidence you've seen, of a motive of revenge or just a joy killing?
There's really, that's part of what's so frustrating is at this point, there's really no idea as to why they would have done this.
Lieutenant Shane Hunter says investigators have questioned more than 200 people in their search for leads. Chasing down every tip, rumor, and whisper that might crack the cold case.
When I say 200, that's really on the low end side. We've probably spoken to just that many people that had an association with Mr. Grimes. He was a prominent leader in Spring Hill. He was a civic, part of the multiple groups up there. So obviously he touched many lives, was a big part of the Boys and Girls Club, just a very genuinely good person. So he had a lot of contacts. So ultimately, when we would go interview somebody, they would say, well, you need to go talk to this person and whatever. So like I said, easily 200 people that we've talked to that just had personal contact or knowledge about him throughout, the last 4 years.
Not a person that had a problem to grind with Mr. Grimes. Did people that even he'd been dismissed from work still speak highly of him?
Absolutely. And that's what makes this case so difficult, is that not that you dismiss any victim, but I've been doing this for 27 years, and this is probably one of the most difficult cases I've worked when it's relating to a victim, because you could not find anybody that had a bad word to say about him. Genuinely, you'll find somebody that's had some kind of tiff with a person that, throughout the years, and would say something negative about a victim, but that was what was unusual about Mr. Grimes, was that people that he had employed and had terminated still had nothing but very good things to say about him. They would genuinely say, I messed up. He had to fire me, but, I still loved him. He was a good man. He was concerned about everybody's family. Would try to introduce you to God and religion. And, there was one individual that obviously they owned a body shop, and Mr. Grimes has seen where somebody had spray painted something inappropriate political purposes on this person's car, and he found a way to get in contact with them and said, I'll take care of your vehicle, and actually, painted their vehicle for him, just out of his own pocket. So that kind of goes to the fortitude that, Mr. Grimes stood for.
The small sheriff's department has poured thousands of hours into the case, following leads that have stretched far beyond Tennessee, some spanning the country. It's the kind of sustained commitment that most big city departments, burdened by budgets and bureaucracy, could rarely afford to make. For example, Lieutenant Jeff Perkins focused on a digital trail. He wanted to know, did the killer have a cell phone on him that night? In the digital age, it's a routine yet powerful investigative tool, triangulating signals between cell towers to determine whether a phone had been present at the crime scene. If the killer left his phone on, even for a moment, it could betray his location. This is a small department. Give me a sense of the lengths it has gone to with forensics and analysis and technology to try to solve this crime.
Yeah, so because the area happened in a rural area, no question about it, usually you would think that you could do particular items with geofencing or data dumps from technology from the cell phones, what have you. But because of the area that this particular homicide occurred at, it just so happens that the towers actually are in line. You have 3 towers that are literally a linear alignment. That's no good if we're trying to do data extraction from cell dumps that we could maybe time frame where a phone would be. So G-lock, or that would be geographical location. Mm-hmm. If you try and extrapolate that from numbers, well, usually you have a cell tower and it's got 3 sides of it, right? So you've got your ranges, your azimuth, and then you've got your sectors, 360 degrees. That's the way it's all broken down. And from that point, if you have a tower here and maybe a tower eastward or westward, well, you could then get through time manipulation, looking through the data, you could see, the phone was here at one point, it pinged off that other tower, and then it pinged back to this particular tower, the the primary tower, and then you can do time variances, and it's what we call time difference. And at that point, you could actually track somebody's location. Well, we couldn't do that because of the cell towers that we have in this particular area. Trust me, we've gone to every extent you could possibly imagine.
Lieutenant Perkins turned to another investigative tactic, one that blended old-fashioned detective work with modern computer coding. He wrote a custom computer program to analyze the phone numbers of more than 6,000 of Jim Grimes' customers, just in case one of them had a grudge. His goal? To determine whether any of them had been near the Grimes property on the night of the murder, using location data as a silent witness. It was a long shot, and it came up empty.
I can't tell you how many phone numbers we've scoured, how many phone dumps, data from 3 cellular companies. I mean, that's a lot of information to be pouring through and not find anything that would be definitive. And of course, we don't have a weapon.
It sounds like it was the perfect scene for a crime.
Yeah, no question about it. If you think about who would know that the towers or something like that couldn't track someone there at that particular night, right, or that particular area. I don't think anybody would think about that stuff, right? But it just so happens that was one huge negative for us, right? Like you said, also no cameras in the back. The 2 cameras that were back for, the trail cams, they weren't exactly pointing in the direction that James was found at. So somebody either would have known they were there, or just by pure luck, they never came across those cameras, because that would have been coming across behind the barn, and that would be east to west, and it would have picked that stuff up. Yeah, it's pretty unusual, though. And to think that no one would hear anything, but again, this is a secluded area, right? This is rural, typical Giles County. You've got people that live in spots, and you never hear anything.
We'll return to the episode in just a moment. But first, if you enjoy my exclusive stories, here are ways to support my work. Please tell a friend who loves true crime to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Subscribe to Stories to Keep You Safe, my free newsletter where real lessons from true crime cases meet practical advice you can use to protect yourself and those you love. You can sign up on my website at truecrimereporter.com. If you like my podcast, you'll love my books and audiobooks. The best way to support my work is to buy directly from me on my truecrimereporter.com website. And support this show while getting exclusive discounts on Cozy Earth. We sleep on its unbelievably soft temperature-regulating bamboo bedding. And since 2008, Oprah Winfrey has included Cozy Earth among her favorite things. And Oprah and I go way back. When I received my Peabody Award for investigative reporting in 1995, Oprah was there, honored at the same time with a Personal Achievement Award. Well, after countless late nights unraveling crime stories, I've learned that quality sleep isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Use the promo code on your screen to get an exclusive 41% discount on your purchase from Cozy Earth. A True Crime Reporter receives a commission to help keep producing more stories. Now, follow me into the darkest corners of the criminal mind and let's get back to our story. The Giles County Sheriff brought in one of the nation's foremost experts on unsolved homicides, legendary cold case investigator Joe Kennedy from the Carolinas Cold Case Coalition. Now retired, Kennedy made his mark as a special agent with NCIS, where he founded the federal government's first cold case unit. He didn't just work the toughest cases, he helped write the playbook for investigators. Kennedy encouraged me to report on the Grimes case, hoping that renewed attention and the $1 million reward might flush out new leads or shake loose a long-held secret. As we left the crime scene together, we discussed the case's complexity. It was clear this wasn't just a random killing, it was calculated, and someone out there knows why.
In my mind, there's probably no more than 3 or 4 suspects in this case. It's just getting to that right suspect, and that's the hard part about cold cases is how do we narrow down that pool of suspects, and that's the $1 million question, right, in this one. And, this case is very difficult. It's a single shotgun blast to the chest. The ammunition is not extremely rare. So, that's a hard path to travel to try to identify, or link a particular suspect to the ammunition. There's no shotgun shell that's left behind. Essentially, this is a crime scene devoid of physical evidence. There's no physical evidence to speak of. Other than that, the remnants of that shotgun blast, and it's, it does give us some clues, but they're not real viable clues that we can follow to lead us to a particular person.
Your experience has shown that most murders occur outdoors. Break that down for me. And are they more difficult to solve outdoors?
Yeah, so you'll see that about 2/3 of murders are committed outdoors. About 1/3 of murders are committed indoors. Of course, nature itself, sunlight, right? Exposure to the weather destroys or degrades DNA at an outdoor crime scene. And you'll find that we have a higher closure rate on indoor crime scenes, sometimes upwards in excess of 10% higher closure rate for indoor murders. And indoor murders are easier to work. The evidence, the physical evidence is preserved better. Typically, that requires people to enter and exit locations where maybe there's an ability to track that movement of an individual, whereas outdoor scenes, like the one we have here in Giles County, it's much more difficult, to trace the whereabouts and the travels of a particular suspect, both before and after the murder.
I am impressed by a small department and a few detectives, how much time and resources they put into this. I don't know that you would see that kind of dedication in a big city police department.
Well, I will say this. I was extremely impressed with the effort of the Giles County Sheriff's Department. We initially came out here in March of last year. Myself, Craig Ackley, retired FBI agent, just a brilliant investigator. Ed Collins, retired New York State Police, another brilliant investigator. And we all commented on our way back after we had been out here last year that, wow, for such a small department, these guys put an impressive investigative product together. And they have, uncovered all the stones that they possibly could have. They've done some very non-traditional investigative techniques. And like you said, Robert, you would see this in a lot of major metropolitan homicide units. So yeah, I'm most impressed with also the quality of the people. When you have a small sheriff's department, the leadership starts at the top with the sheriff. And Kyle, he is just obviously just a great human being, a man of integrity, and all of his officers, follow that model. Whether it's Luke or it's Jeff or it's Shane, these are just great, respectable police officers out doing their job, tireless workers. The sacrifices they've made in this thing are, if the public knew all the personal sacrifices these investigators made, probably wouldn't believe it, because they've missed holidays, they've missed birthdays with their kids, all the things that deaf investigators, homicide detectives, experience in the course of their career. So I would echo what you see is that this certainly was no stone left unturned in this thing, and I'm confident they're going to solve this case because of the quality of the investigators that they have working it.
But even the most dogged investigation can hit a wall when there's no forensic evidence, no witnesses, and no clear motive. That's where the $1 million reward comes in, designed to pry open locked lips. In your experience, perpetrators don't keep secrets.
They always tell someone, Robert, in the vast majority of successfully closed cold cases, the suspect, for any number of reasons, told someone they did it, it's that first sign of their attempts to cope with what they've done. It's a coping mechanism. They got to get it off the chest. They got to get it off their minds. And so they tell someone that they did it. And so that's my hope, that reward could maybe encourage someone to come forward that has been told something, because we know that is one of the investigative steps that has to always be followed with cold cases. Find who they told what they know about that. Find the person that they told that they were involved in the murder of James Grimes.
For the team pursuing Jim Grimes' killer, the calendar doesn't matter. 4 years in, their determination hasn't wavered. This case isn't just another file, it's a promise, and they're not letting go. I would think for the killer, knowing how hard the detectives on this case are working, and then like a Joe Kennedy coming to the table, they ought to be a little bit worried.
Absolutely. They know that one day that we'll knock on their door and ultimately they'll be arrested for this. I don't think this is just the perfect crime that somebody's going to walk scot-free for. We're not going to let it happen like that. There's too many people that are dedicated in getting this solved, and ultimately justice will be served.
Dawn Grimes refuses to let her husband's murder fade into memory. She's keeping the case alive, loud, visible, and impossible to ignore.
Every day you wake up and you live with this every day, not knowing, are they going to come after me? Are they going to come after my children, my grandchildren? Are they going to come after somebody else in the community? If they've done this once, are they going to do it again? That's very unnerving to know that they're still out there every day, and it's the right thing to do. You don't do something like this to another human being. So please help us.
The reward remains at $1 million for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person or persons responsible for killing Jim Grimes. If you know something, now is the time to come forward. Call 931-638-2358 or 800-TBI-FIND to begin the process of claiming the reward. And if fear is holding you back, know this: investigators have pledged to protect your safety. This is Robert Riggs reporting for the True Crime Reporter podcast. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button. Subscribe to the True Crime Reporter Robert Riggs channel if you haven't already done so. If you want to know when new videos are available, hit the bell button to be notified as soon as a new story is live.